You grow up in South Philadelphia, with plaster saints on every wall and a father who smells like formaldehyde before breakfast. He's a funeral director. Third generation, the Rizzuto family has handled the dead of this neighborhood since your grandfather packed bodies into horse-drawn hearses on Passyunk Avenue. Your father calls it a calling. Your mother calls it a curse. You grow up somewhere in between, learning to tie Windsor knots on corpses before you learn to drive. Learning that grief is a business before you learn that business is grief. The neighborhood is changing. The old Italian butcher on the corner becomes a juice bar. The social club on Mifflin Street, the one with the card tables and the back room. And the men who speak in half sentences, that becomes a yoga studio. The old world is dying, and nobody is holding a funeral for it. Except you notice something. Some funerals are different. Certain bodies arrive at 3 a.m., wrapped in something other than hospital linen. Certain men stand in the back of the viewing room with their hands folded like they're praying, but they're not praying. They're watching. They're counting heads, making sure the right people showed up and the wrong people didn't. Your father handles these with the same quiet efficiency as all the others. He never asks questions. He never charges double. He just does the work. You ask him once. You're 16. You ask him who those men are. He looks at you over the embalming table, fluorescent light making both of you look half dead, and he says, "They're our neighbors. Marco, we take care of our neighbors." He dies when you're 23. Heart attack. 41 years of formaldehyde and quiet secrets. Catching up to him on a Tuesday night. You bury him yourself. You do the makeup. You tie the Windsor knot. You open the doors the next morning and find out exactly who your neighbors are. 3 weeks after the funeral, a man named Carmine Battaglia walks in at 9 in the morning, 60-something, silver hair, a suit that costs more than your monthly overhead. He sits down across your desk like he owns it and looks at you for a long time without speaking. Then, your father was a man of discretion. You wait. I need to know if you are. He slides a plain envelope across the desk. A body will arrive Thursday night. It needs to be prepared and interred without a death certificate, without a county record, without a family viewing. The plot is already purchased under a name that isn't the dead man's name, in a cemetery in Chester County, where nobody asks questions because the groundskeeper's son attends. A school that Carmine's foundation funds. What if I say no? You ask. He stands, buttons his jacket. Then I find another funeral home, and this one probably has a fire in the electrical panel sometime next spring. Nobody gets hurt, but 40 years of your family's work becomes a parking lot. He says it the way a man discusses weather. But I think you'll say yes, he adds. Your father said yes for 30 years, and nothing bad ever happened to him. Did it? It's not a question. You say yes. The wrong door opens. It looks exactly like the only door. That is always the tragedy. The first year, you are a janitor with a license. They don't trust you with anything that matters. You receive bodies at 3 a.m. You ask no questions about cause of death. You prepare them. And here is where your training becomes something strange. You are extraordinarily good at making violent deaths look peaceful. A man with 3 gunshot wounds becomes a man who died of cardiac arrest. Mortuary wax fills the wounds. Strategic casket positioning conceals the rest. You learned all of this from textbooks. Now you practice it on men whose names you were never given. The rules come slowly. Nobody teaches you directly. You absorb them the way you absorb everything in this world, by watching and shutting up. Rule 1. Never ask who the dead man was. Rule 2. Never ask who killed him. Rule 3. If law enforcement contacts you, you call Carmine's attorney before you say a single word. Rule 4. The paperwork is always clean. You have a doctor, a real doctor, a man named Stellato, who lost his DEA license in 2009, who signs death certificates for $2,000 a signature. Cardiac arrest. Always cardiac arrest. Rule 5. The one nobody says out loud. You are part of the system now. Useful things are protected. Useful things that stop being useful are themselves buried. You understand this on a Tuesday in February, when you're cleaning the preparation room at midnight and realize you haven't spoken to anyone outside this world in 4 months. Just kidding. You spoke to your mother last Sunday. She asked how business was. You said fine. 14 months in, they bring you a body that is still warm. Not dead, breathing, barely. A young man at 25 at most, zip-tied, beaten, chest rising in shallow pools. 2 men set him on your preparation table like furniture and hand you a phone. Carmine's voice, calm. He talks to nobody. He leaves nobody. You understand what I'm asking? You stand in the fluorescent light with formaldehyde in your throat, and this kid's chest moving, and you understand that every decision you've made in 14 months has been a road leading exactly here. To this room. To this table. To this choice. You call back. You say you're a funeral director, not a killer. There's a long silence. Then, fine, we'll handle it. You prepare him after. The men come back 40 minutes later. You prepare him. You fill the wounds. You sign the paperwork Stellato already drafted. You tell yourself there is a difference between what they did and what you do. You tell yourself this for years. Some nights you almost believe it. Within 5 years, you are the most valuable. Non-member in the Philadelphia organization. Here is what you actually do. Because most people have no idea how much infrastructure death requires when it needs to disappear. Every death in Pennsylvania generates a paper trail. Death certificate, burial permit, disposition form, cemetery record. You solve this with layering. Stellato handles the certificates. You maintain 14 pre-purchased cemetery plots across 4 counties under 12 different shell identities, acquired through a real estate attorney who bills everything as estate planning and asks nothing. For bodies that cannot be buried, federal witnesses, man whose absence needs to look like disappearance rather than death. You use a cremation facility in Delaware, whose owner owes a debt that predates you. Cremation leaves nothing. You process the paperwork under names pulled from a ledger of deceased infants. Born in Philadelphia between 1960 and 1975, real social. Security numbers attached to people who stopped existing before the digital age. Could catch up. You also become the organization's intelligence architecture. Funerals are surveillance operations. Who attends? Who doesn't? Who stands in the back? Who cries too hard? Who doesn't cry at all? You file quiet reports. You are the only man in every room that nobody suspects of anything. The priest watches the altar. The FBI watches the door. Nobody watches the funeral director. You tell yourself you are a craftsman, just extraordinarily good at a very specific job. By year 8, you have a house in Chestnut Hill, with a garden your wife planted before she stopped asking about your hours. Carmine calls you consigliere of the dead. It's a joke. He only makes jokes he means, but the paranoia is structural now. You check the preparation room every morning before staff arrives. You keep a second phone in a lockbox in your car. You have memorized the license. Plates of 3 FBI surveillance. Vehicles that rotate through your block. You know which of your suppliers reports to law enforcement because Carmine's people told you 18 months ago. You sleep fine. That's the part you cannot explain. You sleep fine, and you don't know if that makes you a professional or a sociopath or simply a man who has outsourced his conscience to necessity. The back is always to the wall. The car checked every morning. Power is a prison with better furniture. One Wednesday in October, a woman comes in to arrange her husband's funeral. 60-something. Hands like your mother's. She sits across your desk and apologizes for crying. And you say, there is nothing to apologize for. And she says her husband brought her coffee every morning for 41 years and she doesn't know how to wake up without that sound anymore. You sit with her 2 hours. You pick the casket she can afford. You help write the obituary. You find a photograph, him young, laughing at something off camera. And you say, this one. This is how people should remember him. She holds the photograph and says, yes, that's exactly him. At the service, you stand in the back like always. But this time you're not watching the room. You're watching her. Watching what love looks like from the outside when it's over. Watching a woman grieve a man who brought her coffee for 41 years. You drive home and sit in the car in the dark for a long time. You don't know what you're feeling. You only know it cost something. Something you don't have a name for yet. Year 11. A federal task force 3 years in the making produces indictments. Carmine is smart. Smart men facing 40 years make calculations that have nothing to do with loyalty. An attorney you've never met calls on a Thursday. Your name appears in a sealed cooperation agreement. 72 hours before it unseals. 11 years. 11 years of bodies prepared in silence. Paperwork immaculate. Dead men vanished with surgical precision. You were never initiated. Never made. Always adjacent. Always useful. Never family. Carmine traded your name for 2 years off a 12-year plea. A line item. A transaction. You were, in the end, just another body to be handled. Assets don't get warned. Assets get spent. The FBI comes Friday morning. 6 agents. 2 vehicles. Your wife is in the garden deadheading roses when they pull up. You watch her through the kitchen window for one moment. Just one. Before you open the door. The irony lands clean and merciless. You spent 11 years making deaths disappear. Every document airtight. Every record clean. Every body accounted for under some name in some ledger. You left no trace. They got you on paperwork. Not the bodies. The shell corporations. The cemetery deeds. A paper trail so precise, so consistent, so perfectly constructed that it became a map straight back to you. Your own craftsmanship. Your own precision. The very system that made you invaluable made you irrefutable. 42 counts. Obstruction. Conspiracy. Accessory. Abuse of a corpse. A charge you didn't know existed until you read your own indictment. You plead. 11 years. You will be 61 when you get out. In the cell, you think about the woman with her husband's photograph. Not Carmine, not the bodies, not the plea deal or the house that belongs to someone else now. You think about her sitting across your desk, apologizing for crying, holding a picture of a man who brought her coffee every morning for 41 years. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's everything a life amounts to when the count is finally done. You built a perfect architecture of disappearance. You made sure the dead vanished cleanly, that the machinery ran without friction, that nothing left a mark. You were so good at making lives disappear that you disappeared your own without noticing. The woman's husband had 41 years of coffee. That was his entire legacy. Not money, not power, not what people feared about him. Just the sound of a coffee maker. And the person who still heard it in the silence after. You had the technical precision to erase men from existence. You didn't have the basic human architecture to build a life worth grieving. Somewhere in South Philadelphia right now, a young man is standing in a preparation room at midnight. His father is 3 weeks in the ground. A silver-haired man in a good suit sat across his desk this morning, left an envelope, said, "Your father was a man of discretion." The envelope is still on the desk. The choice is 30 seconds away. That's a wrap for today. The story is fiction, but the system is real. The shell corporations are real. The men who stand in the back of funeral homes counting heads, they are real. And somewhere right now, a door is opening that looks exactly like the only door. If this one hit different, drop a comment below. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.